is Friday, June 13th. I'm Kent Garrett. Welcome to a special edition of The Last Negroes at Harvard. Given the continuing Israeli genocide in Gaaza and the now bombing of Iran by Israel, here are a few words of wisdom that you should seriously think about. First, journalist Caitlin Johnstone.
Israel's own actions invalidate all pro-Israel arguments. I didn't make Israel be this way. It's not my fault that this is what the Zionist project looks like. You can call me an anti-Semitic monster all day for criticizing Israel's genocidal mass atrocities and insane warmongering. But I didn't force this on Israel. This is what Israel chose to be. This is what a state full of Zionists looks like when you let the Zionists do everything they want to do. You can talk all you want about the historic persecution of the Jewish people. You can try to argue that Jews for some reason need a state that's all their own in the geographic location where Jewish people used to live back in ancient history. But what we see before us today is what it looks like when that occurs. This is it. This is the result. This is the only result on offer. And it isn't my fault that that's the case. All arguments made in defense of Israel ultimately rest on the unquestioned assumption that the Jewish people must definitely have a homeland where Jewish people are in control, and that this homeland must definitely be in the location that Israel is in right now. Once you accept this premise, then all the other arguments for the necessity of Israel's actions make sense and can be defended. But we've seen the results of what that premise entails. It necessarily means nonstop violence, tyranny, war, and abuse. It necessarily means genocide. It necessarily means ethnic cleansing. How do we know it necessarily means that? Because here we are. So the premise upon which all pro-Israel arguments rest is invalid, which means all the arguments are baseless, which means there's really no good reason to keep maintaining the status quo of modern Israel, which means there's no good reason Western governments should keep supporting that status quo, which means there's no good reason not to end the apartheid state, give equal rights to all, grant Palestinians the right of return, right the wrongs of the past, and have Israel and its Western backers pay so many reparations to their victims that future generations will not feel the effects of their abuses. That is the only logical position here. Israel's own actions have made that clear. Israel's critics didn't force Israel to choose those actions. Those actions are just the product of everything Israel is. Refresher on the rules for discussing Israeli wars. Okay, it's been a few months since the last war Israel started, so now that Iran's on the chopping block, let's go over the rules once again. Rule 1. Israel is never the aggressor. If Israel attacks someone, it's either a response to an aggression that happened in the past, or a preemptive attack to thwart an imminent aggression in the future. Rule 2. History automatically restarts at the date of the last act of aggression against Israel. If someone attacks Israel, it was completely unprovoked because nothing happened before the attack on Israel. Rule 3. Anything bad that Israel does is justified by Rule 2. This is true even if it does things that would be considered completely unjustifiable if it were done by a nation like Russia or China. Rule 4. Israel has a right to defend itself, but nobody else does. Rule 5. Israel never bombs civilians, it bombs bad guys. If shocking numbers of civilians die, it's because they were actually bad guys, or because bad guys killed them, or because a bad guy stood too close to them. If none of those reasons apply, then it's for some other mysterious reason we are still waiting for the IDF to investigate. Rule 6. Criticizing anything Israel does means you hate Jewish people. There is no other possible reason for anyone to oppose acts of mass military slaughter besides a seething, obsessive hatred for a small Abrahamic faith. Rule 7. Nothing Israel does is ever as bad as the hateful criticisms described in Rule 6. Criticisms of Israel's actions are always worse than Israel's actions themselves, because those critics hate Jews and wish to commit another Holocaust. Preventing this must consume 100% of our political energy and attention. Rule 8. Israelis are only ever the victims and never the victimizers. If Israelis kill Iranians, it's because the Iranians hate Jews. If Iranians kill Israelis, it's because the Iranians hate Jews. Israel is an innocent little lamb that just wants to mind its own business in peace. Rule 9. The fact that Israel is literally always in a state of war with its neighbors and with displaced indigenous populations must be interpreted as proof that Rule 8 is true instead of proof that Rule 8 is ridiculous nonsense. Rule 10. The lives of people in Muslim nations are much less important to us than Western lives or Israeli lives. Nobody is allowed to think too hard about why this might be. Rule 11. The media always tell the truth about Israel and its various conflicts. If you doubt this, then you are likely in violation of Rule 6. Rule 12. Unsubstantiated claims which portray Israel's enemies in a negative light may be reported as factual news stories without any fact-checking or qualifications, while extensively evidenced records of Israeli criminality must be reported on with extreme skepticism and doubtful qualifiers like Iran claims, Hezbollah says, or according to the Hamas-run health ministry. This is important to do because otherwise you might get accused of being a propagandist. Rule 13. Israel must continue to exist in its current iteration, no matter what it costs or how many people need to die. There is no need to present any logically or morally grounded reasons why this is the case. If you dispute this, then you are likely in violation of Rule 6. Rule 14. The U.S. government has never lied about anything ever, and is always on the right side of every conflict. Rule 15. Israel is the last bastion of freedom and democracy in the Middle East, and therefore must be defended, no matter how many journalists it has to assassinate, no matter how many press institutions it needs to shut down, no matter how many protests its supporters need to dismantle, no matter how much free speech it needs to eliminate, no matter how many civil rights its Western backers need to erase, and no matter how many elections its lobbyists need to buy.
Now, journalist Kim Iversen.
The issue with this is what the United States is demanding suddenly from Iran, and that is to completely stop enriching uranium. They have the legal right to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes, so why make the demand? Because it's a trap. By setting the bar at zero enrichment, the U.S. can claim Iran as being defiant, even when Iran is operating within its legal rights. Then boom, the media narrative shifts to Iran refuses to comply. This tactic has been used before. If you remember Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, Libya, Syria, this is the same playbook. Demand something impossible, then blame the country for not agreeing and use that to justify aggression. We do not want a war with Iran on behalf of Israel. And here we are sitting with collapsing infrastructure. We've got a border crisis, economic instability. There's just so much going on. It's not the best look. It's not really what Americans voted for. It looks like the military industrial complex establishment is absolutely manufacturing consent for that war. The question is, will you fall for it?
This has been a special edition of The Last Negroes at Harvard. I'm Kent Garrett.